So we've just reorganized our sanctuary here into sort of a semicircle. So what do you think? Could you hear the choir better than when they are up there in the choir loft? I mean, that's one of the main reasons we've done this radical rearrangement, so that we can hear the choir better, and not just hear, but feel the music in our ears, in our guts, in our bones. See, we human beings are coded in our spiritual DNA to commune with Yahweh, the one who is, the I am. That's God's name. I am who I am. That's how God refers to God's own self. So just like our body knows to secrete hormones and convert enzymes and do all the things to make our body live without our having to think about it or understand it, we are better equipped to feel our communication with the one who is than we are to understand that communion intellectually. And feeling the presence of God with our bodies as well as our minds is why we have choirs and organs and pianos and drums in worship in the first place. The vibration that, say, an organ pipe makes, the synthesized sounds, in the case of our organ, a sound which is made by the vibrations of the woofers and the tweeters up here, or the sound of any wind instrument, like a trombone or a tuba, feels different than the vibrating string of a cello, a harp, or a piano. And those feel different from the vibrating skin of a drum or the vibrating surface of a metal disc, like a cymbal or a tambourine, which feel different from the vibrations of the human voice. And yet what's really interesting is that the Hebrew scriptures tell the worshipers of Israel to use all those things in the praise of the great I am. That's what Psalm 150 is all about, the last and greatest of the Psalms. There's something about sound waves and vibrations, oscillations of pressure transmitted through air and through our bodies that get us closer to God. The most ancient of peoples have used sound to enhance their spiritual experience. Whether it's beating a club on a log or a stick on a skin drum or chanting sacred syllables, playing the Australian didgeridoo with its wild overtones, or pounding those huge Korean gongs, or that weird Mongolian throat singing. Now, a few of those things may match the Western ideal of harmonic beauty, but that's hardly the point. What makes those ways of making sound spiritual tools are the sensations, the vibrations in the chest and in the ear, like the low rumbling of Yahweh on Mount Sinai, or the high frequencies of the angel chorus over Bethlehem. That's what we're after by putting the choir in the acoustical sweet spot of this building. Presence, vibration, and feeling. So that explains why we hauled the choir all the way up from their seats here on the floor, where they can be a part of the congregation in the way that they can't be up there, and help the congregation in hymn singing as well. Okay, but why have all the pew chairs been moved into this rounded semicircle, this orchestra-like configuration? Well, as you're all aware, the United Church of Canada has changed the official nomenclature of who we are as a congregation. Look at the sentences at the very top of the bulletin there. We used to be a pastoral charge, but now we are a community of faith. And how might a community of faith arrange the furniture in its worship space? In straight rows, rank and file? No, that might work in military parades or certain lecture halls, but in a community of equality and acceptance and affirmation? See, as Jesus acted out, as Jesus demonstrated his humble, suffering servant messiahship by riding into Jerusalem on the back of a donkey instead of a mighty steed and snapping banners like Pilate and Alexander the Great and Kaiser Wilhelm did, we might well act out our theology in the very furniture we use to gather together on Sunday mornings and in our special services like the one coming up Thursday evening. We might well demonstrate to ourselves and others who would join us here how really communal we are in the very shape of our sacred space. If you've got preachers way up there saying lovely communal words, but there's this Grand Canyon between speaker and congregation, well, it puts the lie to, or at least cancels out, the words that are being said. But a setup like this, strange as it may feel at the moment, since this is our first Sunday like this, it puts the worship leaders, the preachers, and the choir, even though we're still dressed in these medieval garments here, back into the congregation where we belong. A setup like this moves us from worship as talk about God to worship as the experience of God. The communities that are growing lecture less and experience more. More of each other in community, thus more of God, whose realm is both within us and among us. Now think of it this way. If you're speaking out the words to a call to worship or a prayer, or if you're singing a hymn, who are you talking to? Who are you singing to? If it's God, is God up there where the architectural stained glass and the big decorative cross is? Sure, but how much more is God in the heart and soul of your neighbor in community? We're singing to God and to each other at the same time. And given what Jesus taught us about finding the divine within each person, what is the difference? See, finally, there's a rich and wonderful intimacy to this arrangement, an embracing that acts out the intimacy of Abba, the beloved. Jesus taught us that that's who God really is. The beloved is intimate, closer to us than the inside walls of our hearts, closer to us than the sweetest, most tender thought that we might have about a loved one. So the focus of the whole room now is this table where the meal is served, where the prayers are led, and the scripture is read. This table symbolizes the very presence of God, who is woven in and through us. But as you sit here, let's acknowledge that there's also just a bit of discomfort to this, isn't there? I mean, intimacy can be uncomfortable, which is why we avoid it, or at best parcel it out very carefully. But God beckons us, lures us into this community closeness, this roundness here. As one of my favorite writers puts it, this is the 14th century Persian poet known as Hafiz. He wrote this about this roundness that we're all sitting in now. He says, the moon is most happy when it's full. And the sun always looks like a perfectly minted gold coin that was just polished and placed in flight by God's playful kiss. And so many varieties of fruit hang so plump and round from the branches that seem like sculptors' hands. I see the beautiful curve of a pregnant belly shaped by the soul within. And the earth itself and the planets and the spheres so round. I get the hint. There's something about circles that the beloved really likes. Within the circle of the beloved one, there is an infinite community of light. Amen.
It would be nice to see this before.
It would. I cannot guess. Do you have an SD card reader on your computer?